All right, well, good evening. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Hanging in? I'm grateful to be here. I'd like to thank State of State for the invitation to share some things this evening. When I got the call, I decided to take this very seriously and decided to prepare like students prepare for an important term paper. So late last night, I did 2 cans of Red Bull, scrolled on TikTok for 7 hours, and at 1 a.m. I opened my laptop. No, but on a serious note, I'm glad to see that students are aspiring to do great work in the classroom, academically speaking. You still have a real chance, and it's not too late to create the person you want to become. And so when we talk about the concept of academic weapon, and we think about it representing a little bit of college humor and internet slang, to be honest. And so I'm here to offer a broader challenge. And I want you to imagine a world where higher education isn't just about sharpening the minds, but also about nurturing hearts and character, right, and resilience. And so let's look at student success for just a moment and why solely striving to be an academic weapon might ultimately limit your potential. The right stuff can be buried often in the piles of assignments, right? And the world needs multifaceted individuals. We need emotional intelligence and resilience. And the challenge really is to embrace this both inside and outside of the classroom and create what I would call the productive struggle. And I'm talking about character, right? What makes you worthy to lead other people? And so when I was a kid, my first job, I was just 12 years old the summer after 6th grade. My mom said, get a job. I had to bike 2 miles to these greenhouses. There were 6 of them, 40 yards long. By 9 a.m., it was 100 degrees and humid inside of these. I had to bike at 6. I was covered in dirt. My hands were black with grime. I was exhausted. And this was Monday through Friday. I wiped out on my bike a ton of times, I remember. And none of that actually seemed hard. What was difficult was I was a rule follower and there were bullies. Other boys who worked there picked on me pretty bad. But I had goals and I stuck it out. I wanted to buy things my parents wouldn't get for me. So I worked there for 3 years. I learned that there are bosses who don't mitigate conflict really well, and I learned that I wanted to upskill from picking tomatoes. So the next job I had was around 15, 16. I worked for a builder, nice family, beautiful homes. I learned landscaping and home repair. And I actually was asked to get inside of dumpsters and rearrange the garbage for sustainability and cost efficiency. And at this job, I learned how to negotiate salary, and I learned a ton of home improvement skills. The job after that was around 18 or so. This was for the local buildings and grounds of my school district. I had to apply for this bigger team. I was part of the lawn crew, but I also became a mechanic's assistant, and then I was put on teams that had more complex problems to solve, like building all the children's playgrounds at all the elementaries. There were 9. And so I can still go home and see these things standing. And I learned here how to be proud of your work, how to work in a team, how to operate heavy equipment and bobcats and jackhammers and stuff like that. It was a good job, and I supplemented all this even with working in a kitchen. If you've worked in food service, then you might also have these experiences of time management, organizational intensity, teamwork, and of course, baking and cooking skills and prep skills that will last you the rest of your life. All this to say, I was also an athlete and into music like many folks here, and I played sports and volleyball, and later I became a coach, and I'm a coach today, and I'm just bringing that up because I wanted to share that. I'm going to bring in some coaching aspects to what I say tonight, and I wanted to give you the reference point. It was all part of the work, right? And so I think the idea here is that I was not handed those things. My parents were a little bit more hands-off. I had to apply for those jobs. I had to train for them. I had to travel to them. I had to survive to keep them. And in doing so, built what we call resilience, right? And so, you know, along with that came a sense of value, a sense of significance, a sense of competence, and even a sense of power. So would it surprise you to know that when I got to Penn State, I applied myself and that mindset of resilience very similarly to my education, right? Tried hard in my classes, but I also joined clubs and orgs and did research and internships. I walked on and made the men's volleyball team, all really good stuff. I just think back to how we can get trapped sometimes into more elementary thinking, into a mindset where being an academic weapon is the goal, right? And I don't want folks to be fooled into thinking that. And so what does it really mean to be an academic weapon, and more importantly, how to miss at filling your potential? And so I think, let's break it down. When we focus solely on being an academic weapon, we often prioritize competition over collaboration. And now competition is not a bad thing. You know, I think it pushes us to do our best, it pushes us to aspire to achieve excellence. But where the line gets drawn for me is when competition becomes a win-at-all-cost mentality. And in a win-at-all-cost mentality, you start to build a different relationship with people. And in fact, I think that it can seriously remove relationships that were healthy and distort them. And unfortunately, I think it can corrupt empathy and dismantle us as teammates, as classmates, as neighbors, and as citizens. When we focus solely on being an academic weapon, we often prioritize success over significance. And as a coach, you know, my teams can get caught up in chasing medals and trophies. I can do that too. And it's kind of like chasing grades, right? And not having a purpose. I often ask myself, you know, why did you start playing a game in the first place? As a child, it was there, it was fun, your friends were there. But in the end, it started to become a sport, and the mentality changed a little bit. You know, if you've ever had a losing season and your coach says, well, we built a lot of character this year, almost as a joke, you know, I don't think that success is something we settle for during a losing season. And nor do I think that success erodes character. And so, you know, in like taking classes without a purpose, we have to examine the why, the reason that you're here and taking all these classes. So of course you play to win, and of course you're here to get the job, right? And my message today in part is that you can do both. You can do both. So again, focusing solely on being an academic weapon, it might predispose us to prioritizing grades over growth. And please don't get me wrong, grades are really important. They get us into grad school and med school and competitive internships that get the job. Where I'm going with this though is that the goal overall really is excellence. The goal is excellence. And so I might emphasize that you have a sense of progress and not perfection. How can you evolve as a student? And so at the end of the class, at the end of the semester, at graduation, the question isn't to look back and ask, what did I get out of my education? What did I get here? The question rather would be, who am I becoming here? Right? And to answer that, you need to have experiences. You need to get out into the world and try stuff, right? And so the Student Engagement Network does challenge students to do that in any endeavor that we host along with students. They are tasked to reflect on these critical life skills, whether it's citizenship or leadership or systems thinking or equity and inclusion or communication and teamwork, all those things you've heard 100 times. But how do you do that? Through reflective journaling, through different types of reflection, so that what we challenge them to do is actually create artifacts, which you all might have already: posters, performances, presentations, publications, right? Hundreds of students have come through that share personal growth, testimony about professional readiness, as well as community or social impact. And we start them with this model, which is really our curriculum for engaged learning. At the top, at 1 o'clock there, finding your why, asking yourself questions of purpose, your sense, your core anchoring mission as to what drives you while you're here. Going on from there, you would create an intentional pathway forward, and today we're at the 7 o'clock hour, they're talking about completing experiences, getting out there and getting after it. So let's redefine success just for a moment and close out. So we've been conditioned in many ways to believe that success often in academia comes from this focus intentionally and intensely on grades. But what about empathy and creativity and compassion? Those things are hard to measure. They're hard to test, right, using standardized assessments. But they're what the world really demands of us. And as we think about the experiences that we have as engaged learners, your mind changes, and a well-formed mind is more valuable than a well-filled mind. A mind that can react, a mind that can step back and make decisions with empathy, right? A mind that is shaped by original thinking. And so in this instance, I would say be a searcher, be a seeker for these experiences in that mindset and not a needer. Engagement heightens our emotion. It helps us feel deeply the value, beauty, and humanity of our world. This enhancing experiences as college students, right? It stokes our appetite for life. It's about people. It's about relationships. And whether together or in reflective solitude, we take the experiences that we have forward with us into our lives so that we can contribute to what's next. And I would say, don't leave it to chance. Make it a study. And of course, character the world needs. When we ask students about their why statement, we ask them, what does the world need as part of that questioning? Being an academic weapon is like a tool that doesn't quite perfectly translate to the world outside of the academic universe. While hard work is admirable, the challenge is to find the right chisel or the right tool that will strip away the raw material, right? The hard stone, to get down to what really matters. It's the person that you are after you chisel down, right? That is to what is underneath. And so the challenge here is to look for the tools that will shape you. What forges you? What helps you to find the truth, even if it hurts? As an athletic coach in youth sports, one of the things that I always tell my teams is you don't get better until you play harder teams. And that it's okay to fail and learn and grow. It is okay. It's okay to try something harder. And in sports, I call that toughness. And I tell my teams, toughness is a skill that you can develop just like any other skill of the game. In higher education, we call it resilience. And so resilience is a skill that you all can develop just like any other skill. And we ask, why do we engage, right? It's to find meaning. It's to find the truth. Maybe to find awe or perspective or motivation or inspiration, or to find bridges or reduce fear, lower anxiety, find bigger hearts and richer lives. When I look back, I'm so glad that I had those jobs. And I'm so very glad that they were hard and that I had to wipe out on my bike and pick tomatoes and get bullied. When you venture out and you push the boundaries, things will open wide. embrace the productive struggle. Push beyond your comfort zone and feel the growing pains of a broadening perspective. Along with your efforts to wield the inner academic weapon, choose the right tools that will chisel you into the best version of yourself by the time you graduate. Thank you.